You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Sean Brodrick, natural resource specialist at the Oxford Club. His website, investmentu.com, U being the letter U. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Thanks very much for having me on.
Canadians Monday night were glued to their TV sets watching the election results. Few people, except one of my guests, predicted a Liberal majority. Mr. Trudeau has promised that he'll bring in legalized marijuana for Canada. Is that a good or bad thing?
Oh, I think that's an extremely good thing. For one thing, you have this black economy, or else at least a gray economy, which you then legalize, and so therefore you can tax that. And if you do it like they did in Colorado, you can end up making more tax money than you literally know what to do with. And the good thing about that is it takes the pressure off other parts of the economy. They don't have to tax other parts as much if they're suddenly doing that. And also that really undercuts the people who were illegally selling marijuana, which as we know is the gangsters. So we'd like to hurt those guys anyway. So it really seems kind of a win-win for me.
I know that the U.S. states that legalized it said they're making twice the revenue they expected. Just in British Columbia, our biggest crop isn't apples or cherries. It's said to be marijuana worth $4 billion a year. Yet I hear projections that the federal government would only make $400 million a year on marijuana. Do you think people are grossly underestimating just how much money is involved in it?
Well, it depends on how they do it, because they have to legalize it enough that it becomes more convenient to actually buy it legally than to buy it illegally. Probably in Colorado you can still find people selling marijuana illegally. Probably in California you can, and it is California's big, it's their biggest cash crop as well. Now, California has a problem in that marijuana growing sucks up so much water, and they have a terrible drought that it's really problematic for them. It's actually causing ecological harm. I don't think you'll have that problem up in Canada. So that's not something you will have to really worry about. But there are things you have to weigh. You have to see, will this work that way, and stuff like that. But yes, you are probably right. They're probably underestimating what they will pull in. And so once they get the fees for people who open up shops that actually work with marijuana and all the other stuff, it can turn into quite the cash cow tax-wise.
Moving from pot to oil, what's happening with crude right now?
Well, I'm actually getting much more positive about crude. I've been lower for longer for a long time, and now I'm really seeing some things that could really help push the price of oil higher. I'm not saying right now, but I would expect it at the end of this year or maybe the first quarter of 2016. And the reason people need to know that is because the big money guys will move ahead of that, right? And so if you want to get in while things are still cheap, you should start picking things over. What am I seeing? Well, I'm seeing things like China, which is seeing its oil imports in August up 9.8% year over year. We'd all heard that China's really slowing down. The economy is not doing so well. Well, maybe they are having some economic problems, but apparently everybody loves to drive over there the way that we do here. Plus, also, they are building up their strategic oil reserves, and they want to add about 300 million more barrels of oil to that, which would really take off a lot of the overhang on the global oil market, could really start to ship that stuff to China. The other thing is, here in the U.S., year over year, gasoline usage is up 3.8%. Now that beats what they were expecting, which is 2.1%. And if this is happening across the free world, or I guess we call it the developed world now, and there's no reason to think it isn't, then that shows that we could see a lot more use on the consumer side, more than people are expecting, and so that could be a really positive force. We have seen the market already price some things in, like oil coming from Iran, which should come in the first quarter of 2016, assuming everything moves along the way it's planned. So a lot of bad news is priced in, and there's some stuff that is quite bullish for oil that isn't priced in yet. So I wouldn't expect the price to really move until the end of this year or the first quarter of 2016, but I think that people might want to pick and choose what stocks they might want to have in their portfolios when that happens.
How is gold working out?
Well, not badly, actually. The day you and I are talking, there was a huge rally in the U.S. dollar, and gold just sat right where it was. Many people were taking that as a bullish sign, and we saw money move into the stocks as a result of that, because we saw gold push up through its 200-day moving average, head up a bit. I told all my subscribers I would never expect gold to move up to the 200-day moving average on the first try. It has to go down and retest support. And sure enough, it did. Now it's holding that support. The question is, will this support give and it goes lower, or else will this support hold? The action we've seen recently in gold actually looks quite bullish. And so that is something to watch, because those stocks, or at least the better ones, have been beaten flat with a hammer, and it really is a lot of value. They've had years now to cut costs and really make things function on like a lower price basis, cost-wise. So if the price goes higher and we hit, say, my target for gold right now is 1,380. Supposing we hit 1,380, there's some great companies that are going to make a lot of money if that happens. So I like gold, and you know I like silver, and I think those are some things people can be looking at.
What makes you hot on silver?
Basically, well, I wouldn't want to really boil it down to one thing, but a major thing would be how much silver is used in solar power. And we are seeing a tremendous upthrust in how much solar is being built out all around the world. And so in at least most of those solar panels, a little silver goes into each one. And if you do that over a few megawatt, then a few gigawatt, then many gigawatts, that turns into a big demand on the industrial side for silver. You put that together with the fact that the silver coins, I mean, they are just selling out. They're selling out all the time. That's why they have such a high premium on the silver coins now. But that shows that mom and pop investors are kind of looking to that. You can understand why, especially with the U.S. election. And I know you and your listeners are in Canada, and I hate to be so U.S. focused. But, I mean, we've been told here in the U.S., at least this is what the TV is telling us, that the leader on one side, the one who is leading the pack, is a clown, and the leader on the other side might be a socialist. You put those things together, mom and pop really start to worry at that point, right? So I think that's one of the things that could boost, like, the demand for, like, silver coins. But it's not just in the U.S. We're seeing it in Australia. We're seeing it in Europe. We're certainly seeing it in Canada. I mean, you're seeing those nice silver maple leafs just sell right out. So there's a lot going on in silver, and I think that it's a very positive trend for the metals right now.
Well, the last two big sales for silver coins in Canada, one featured Bugs Bunny and the other one is Superman. Yeah, I said nothing's more Canadian than Bugs Bunny.
Maybe Yosemite Sam. No, wait. It would be Yukon Cornelius. That's who it would be, right?
There you go. But Superman was invented by a Canadian.
Oh, that's right. Now that you mention it, yes, he was. Wasn't he a Canadian? Yeah.
Yeah, Schuster.
Yeah.
We'll have more with Sean Brodrick right after the break.
More and more people are looking to the internet for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Sean Brodrick. Cyberspace, some really big problems looming. Can you maybe explain?
Well, you know, my readers get used to me going on and on and on about this, right? Because I keep saying, you know, this is one of the biggest threats of the 21st century, and on. But I'm not the only one worrying about this. Admiral Michael Rogers, who's the head of the National Security Agency in the U.S., recently spoke at a conference sponsored by the Wall Street Journal, and he said that a big cyber attack is a matter of if, not when, and he had three things that really worried him. Number one was cyber attacks against infrastructure. That means like the power grid, traffic control systems, nuclear power plants, that kind of thing. I mean, because he says they can watch these groups trying to do stuff. They haven't succeeded yet, but, you know, at some point they just might succeed. The other one, or I should say the second one, would be a data manipulation. And that is, they can change things on the web because, like any kid who uses Wikipedia, you're always at a risk that what you see on the web is not real, right? And because you see kids in high school now, they actually cite Wikipedia as a source, but in the meantime, people are making things up there. What happens if that happens on like a air traffic control system? And so some planes are removed, others are put on. That kind of thing could have catastrophic consequences, and so that's one of the other things that's really worrying Admiral Rogers. And the third thing is stateless bad guys. And I gave my own presentation about this recently. This is like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, particularly ISIS. They seem to be very internet savvy for a medieval group. Someone who wants to live in the dark ages. These guys know social media, but they also know computers. And the problem is there are such low barriers to entry to actually doing this kind of stuff that they can put many, many people to work working on these kind of things because they do want to bring the system down, and someday they could succeed. This worries the head of the NSA. This worries me, and so that's the kind of thing that we're looking at.
Also, the Canadian and U.S. governments have formed committees to start working on cybersecurity for the computers in your car because the car makers themselves are doing very little about it, and they've proven that you can take over somebody's car remotely.
This is a major issue. I was just hearing about that on my car radio today, as a matter of fact, was that they are just realizing how vulnerable your cars are. And it might not be terrorists, but supposing someone wanted to kill you, they could take over your car system and drive you off a cliff. That kind of thing, that used to not be possible in a car, but now it is. And so that's the kind of thing that really has them worried. And yeah, certainly the people who make the cars haven't really done enough, so it's up to the government to try and come up with some kind of solution.
So people who own old cars, I have an old sports car from 1984, there's nothing computerized about it. Maybe I'm safer.
Well, there are some computer things, but they aren't really connected to the internet, so you're much safer. As long as you're off the grid, you're fine. Excuse me. My problem is my new car, which is a Honda CR-V, which I just bought, it is connected to the internet. Anytime I have my phone in there, it's like going through my phone to actually access stuff all the time. And so that's the real problem, is the new ones not only have computers in them, they have computers that are on the internet, which means they can be hacked.
Do you have to use a password to get your car to go?
No, I don't. It's just that, since my phone can go on the internet all the time, so can my car, because I actually use my car through my phone. When I'm in my car now, I'm completely hands-free. I don't have to pick up my phone. I just answer things through my sound system and all that stuff.
Hackable cars, that's a big concern when they tell us within 5 years we're going to be sitting in robot cars that don't need a driver.
Exactly. So what if someone hacks your robot driver in your car? That could be really serious. And let's get back to ISIS, because they will try things. What if they hacked like all the cars on a particular highway that were all robot cars? And so those cars would not only be threats to themselves, but to every other car on the highway. That's the kind of problem that probably keeps Admiral Rogers up at night, and that's the kind of thing we all have to think about. There are solutions for these things, by the way. It's just that we have to spend money to do it. And so global spending on cybersecurity will hit $75.4 billion this year. That's up 4.7% from last year, and it's going to keep climbing. So this is an area where people can invest, and there's actually a lot of potential there.
The U.S. government, it seems to me this happens way too often. The U.S. government could be shut down again because they don't have budgets in line.
Well, yes, that's because there's one party in our Congress which is ruled by maniacs. I probably shouldn't laugh, but yeah, the obvious thing is to raise the budget and then, raise the debt limit and then get around to dealing with the fact that we keep spending more money than we bring in. That is a problem. It's not a crisis. It's a crisis when you hit your debt limit. And so if you hit the debt limit and you don't raise the debt ceiling, then a lot of bad things can happen. Now, we almost had this happen in 2011. And when that happened, that resulted in a credit rating downgrade of the United States by Standard & Poor's. In 2013, the U.S. government actually shut down, or at least the non-essential things did. Now, for some reason, congressmen still get paid. I guess they consider themselves essential, right? But so the problem is, the longer it goes on, the more that it mushrooms. It's not just all the national parks shut down, which will happen. It's not only that loans may be delayed or denied, and it's just the longer this goes on, there are big parts of the economy that have to interact with the government. If they can't interact, they really can't operate. So if the government isn't functioning for 3 to 4 weeks, that can remove about 1.2% of gross domestic product from the U.S. economy. That's 3 to 4 weeks. And it can go longer if people are being particularly hard-headed. So if it does go longer, then you go into recession. If you go into a major U.S. debt default, then you get mega austerity, kind of like what Greece had. And the last time the government shut down, and I'll just make this the last thing, there are many more things I could go into, but the last time the government shut down, we had widespread poisoning because there was a multi-state salmonella outbreak that went through 18 states, but the Centers for Disease Control was shut down, so they couldn't do anything about it. So there are many things that can just get worse and worse, and so it can worsen any crisis you're in. And so this could happen as early as November 3rd, or it could start like around November 10th, maybe if we're really lucky, November 19th. The best thing would be for the two sides in Congress to come to an agreement before that and actually work this thing out, because one more thing is every week the government is shut down costs an extra $10 billion on top of whatever else you would spend, because things have to shut down, people have to go home, then you have to hire them back on overtime to fix things. So it's an extra $10 billion per week, every week the government is shut down. So hopefully they'll actually work out an agreement beforehand, but I'm not hopeful, because in the Republican majority in Congress, things are so poisonous right there that we just had one Speaker of their House quit, another Speaker of their House could not take the job because he couldn't get along with one certain section of his Congress. Another guy flat out refused it. So they will probably give it to Paul Ryan, and I hope he can ride, herd over those wild guys that he has down there. If he can, then maybe we won't have the problem. But if we do have a problem, there might not be someone to fix it, and that's why it's really could be an emergency and one we have to keep our eyes on.
Yes, and Speaker of the House, that's the third most powerful position in the U.S. government.
Technically, I mean, if like everybody else gets wiped out, yeah, that's like a short trip to the Oval Office. So it seems to be a job nobody wants. So I can only assume it's a nightmare, right? I mean, many of these guys would much rather be congressmen and not take that job, so it must really be terrible.
Well, you actually have to work for a living.
Many of them work hard, even if that's only shaking down people for money. I know whenever I see my congressman, he has a hat out.
Sean, thanks a lot for chatting with us.
Hey, it's always great to speak to you. It's an exciting time in the markets, and I think we'll have a lot of fun talking about it.
My guest has been Sean Brodrick, Natural Resource Specialist at the Oxford Club. His website, investmentu.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Comments or questions for the show can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.